Hey up, darlings! So today's movie up for discussion is another in a long line of Disney live-action cash-ins. Like Maleficent, this is another Disney prequel origin story of one of their classic villains. This time we're doing the fur-loving fashionista Cruella de Vil, made famous from the 101 Dalmatians movie. Of course, today we'll be talking about Craig Gillespie's Cruella. We've already had a live-action 101 Dalmatians movie back in 1996 when Glenn Close gave one of her most iconic performances as Miss de Vil. But Craig Gillespie's Cruella origin story, it's not really much about the Dalmatians. There are nods to the Dalmatian movies in this film, but this really is Cruella's story. In fact, she starts off the film as Estella, and basically this origin story takes place mostly when Estella is in her 20s, played by a young Emma Stone, and we watch the chain of events that occur which put Estella on the path to becoming Cruella. I'm the first person to admit that this churning out of Disney live-action remakes, sequels, or origin stories has begun to wane on me. I wasn't expecting much from Cruella. I thought it was going to be another formulaic, cookie-cutter origin story which paints a classic villain in a sympathetic light, and it is kind of that. But, there is a but, when a story is executed with as much slickness and style as Cruella, then I can be more forgiving of the lack of originality. I ended up having a pretty good time with Cruella. I'm not going to say it's the best thing to come out of Disney Studios recently because it's not, but it definitely gets more right than it does wrong, and it was far better than it had any right to be because essentially it is just a knockoff version of The Devil Wears Prada, but it does have enough of its own unique flavors that it prevents it from feeling like it's copying The Devil Wears Prada. The primary plot of Cruella is about a young Estella, played by Emma Stone, who lands a job designing clothes for this renowned fashion designer called the Baroness, played with venomous splendor by Emma Thompson. There's more to their relationship than just employee-employer, but I won't divulge any more details than that because I don't want to spoil it for you. But the feuding power dynamics between Estella and the Baroness is what begins the metamorphosis of Estella becoming Cruella de Vil. Because at first, Cruella is just an incognito, pseudonym, alter ego of hers. It's essentially a brand, something that she's in disguise to hide her real identity. But eventually, she starts to realize that Cruella is more than just her brand. It's who she is and who she was meant to be all along. In true punk fashion, this is after all set predominantly in the 1970s in London during the peak of punk's popularity. Cruella stages a series of anti-establishment acts of defiance which are designed to take the spotlight off the Baroness and place it on her. It is a delectable cinematic rivalry. Both the Emmas, Emma Thompson and Emma Stone, are firing on all cylinders in this film. It's one of the best female on-screen rivalries we've had in a good while. Craig Gillespie has a history and a knack for making toxic female relationships the source of great entertainment. He did it previously with I, Tonya, and he's done the same thing here by applying that swift, crisp, biting energy to Cruella. What I love most about Cruella is the performances of the two Emmas. They are absolutely brilliant in this. Just so much fun to watch. But the other thing that I really love about Cruella is the synergy between all the different departments. Sometimes a movie harmonizes perfectly together across all its factions. There's a glue that holds it all together, and I guess the glue of Cruella, in a word, would be style. Not just the obvious style with the costumes, which are lavish, but more on that later, but the style of the camera work, the cinematography, the sets, the editing, and the soundtrack. All the departments complement each other gorgeously. Gillespie's camera work is bold and dynamic, just like Cruella herself. Tatiana Ezreigel's editing is punchy. Fiona Crombie's sets have a nice dichotomy that reflect the duality of Estella and Cruella. On the one hand, you've got the grubby and scrappy Estella, but on the other hand, you've got the opulent and fabulous Cruella. And the soundtrack absolutely slaps. They must have spent an absolute fortune just getting the rights to all the songs in this soundtrack, because there are so many bangers from across the decades, from The Doors, Nancy Sinatra, The Rolling Stones, Blondie, The Clash, The Zombies, and that's just scratching the surface. There are so many more amazing artists that I could mention that feature in the soundtrack. Nicholas Britell composed the score for Cruella, who I love. He's composed some of my favorite scores for movies like Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, as well as the TV series Succession. But I do think his score gets lost in the jukebox soundtrack of bangers that this film boasts. The score itself didn't particularly stand out to me, which is a shame because I do love Nicholas Britell, but he does feel a little bit wasted. But let's talk about those costumes by Jenny Beavan, because oh my days, there are not enough awards on this planet or compliments to give Jenny Beavan for her work in Cruella. Cruella is like an exhibition of divine costumes. The gowns alone. Oh my god, the gowns. It's like fashion porn. I don't even care that much about fashion. I mean, case in point, plain white t-shirt. But I was living for the fashion in this film. I know we're like 11 months away and it's a little early to be theorizing about Oscar predictions, but I would be shocked if Jenny Beavan did not get a nomination for Cruella. In my eyes, she's the clear and obvious frontrunner at the moment. Now let's talk about the negatives, because this film, despite all its glowing positives, it does have some negatives. I do think the script bites off a bit more than it can chew. There's a lot going on in this film. It's a villain's origin story, it's this fashionista rivalry story, it's a heist film, there's nods to 101 Dalmatians, there's subplots involving Cruella's bumbling henchman, Horace, and Jasper, played by Walter Hauser, and not Stephen Fry, Joel Fry, different Fry. So as a film, it feels over-accessorized. There's just a bit too much going on in this film. It needed some fine-tuning. Some of the dialogue as well is a bit iffy. Like, some of it's great. Emma Thompson gets some absolute zingers when she's throwing shady put-downs at others. What was the line that I loved? A master of understatement, as usual. That's brilliant. Basically, she's saying someone's basic. And it kind of reminded me of that line in Devil Wears Prada. Just like, florals in spring. Groundbreaking. But then there's other instances where it's just straight up corny and bad. There was a couple times in the cinema where Glenn and I looked at each other and gave each other this expression. And my final and most frustrating negative about this film is that once again, Disney keeps announcing that they're having out and proud gay characters in their films, when in actuality, they don't. Once again, they made all this fuss in the publicity for Cruella that John McCrea's character Artie is an out and proud gay man. Except in the final product, there isn't anything to actually confirm this. Yes, he owns a clothing boutique and he wears eyeliner, but that doesn't make a man gay. If anything, that just perpetuates outdated stereotypes, but there's nothing in this film that actually confirms anything to do with his sexuality. I'm just sick and tired of all this Disney queerbaiting. They keep saying they're going to be more inclusive and progressive by showing LGBTQ+ characters in their films, telling LGBTQ+ stories, but really, they're not. All they do is allude to it. And I'm sick of that. Disney are doing the absolute bare minimum when it comes to showing LGBTQ+ representation in their films and TV shows. It just really boils my blood that it's 2021 and they're still not following through on their promise. So yeah, I'm just so frustrated at it. Anyway, rant over. So let's ask those three questions. Firstly, would I watch this again? Yes. Question 2, do I recommend this for you guys? Yes. Although I will say Cruella, it does strike me as a type of film that I think some kids might not actually enjoy, because the film is more aimed at adults, I'd say, than it is children. It is a family film. Like, the characters of Horace and Jasper give the film a bit of slapstick, which the kids will enjoy. But yes, I do recommend it. If you're a fan of Cruella de Vil, the character, or the 101 Dalmatians movies, then yes, definitely go check this one out. I had a surprisingly good time with it. I think most people will too. And third question, what score to give it out of 10? It's flawed and wildly predictable, but I did appreciate how cohesive Craig Gillespie managed to bring all the different elements together. The soundtrack, the direction, the performances, the fashion, the sets, the editing, the camera work. It all feels very cohesive. So I'm going to give Cruella a score of 7 out of 10. But as always, guys, it's just one bloke's opinion. I would love to hear your thoughts on Cruella. What did you make of this movie? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys have enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you want more movie, TV, and Oscars-related content, don't forget to click subscribe, and if you want to follow me on any of my socials, they're all in that video description down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. For more things related to movies, TV, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Airfield, and I'll see you next time.